Welcome to this session of In Conversation With, where we're joining you today from Birmingham City University, and the theme that we're going to look at and discuss today is that of building a PGR community, and that's one of the main themes that has been fed back from the Council's Graduate School Managers Network, particularly following their network event in November 2019, and will very much feed into a number of things that we're discussing at our workshop at London School of Economics on the 13th of May. So we do hope that you can come and join us then to continue some of those discussions. So I'm very pleased to welcome Jennie Eldridge to this session today. Jennie is the Head of Doctoral Training at University Alliance, and I'm just going to ask her a few questions today and explore what their approach is to building a PGR community across the multiple institutions and research themes and areas across the DTA. So welcome, Jennie. Thank you very much for being part of the In Conversation session today. So very quickly, could you tell us a little bit about the University Alliance DTA and why was it set up, who's involved, and what research areas it focuses on?
Yeah, of course. So back in 2015, a group of University Alliance members decided to come together to set up their own doctoral training programme outside of the formal structures of research councils, DTPs, as a direct response to the concentration of funding through the DTPs. Alliance members generally haven't been that successful in getting access to doctoral funding through Research Council DTPs. So this was their way of trying to come together, provide their PGR students with the structures and the support, and test out whether they are institutions that could do it. So that was the main driving force behind it. And 2015 saw the pilot programme in Applied Biosciences for Health, and then very soon afterwards we decided to develop a second programme in energy and a third one in social policy, all interdisciplinary programmes. And then in 2018 we were successful in a research grant bid for the Marie Curie co-fund doctoral training programmes. So this has enabled us, and we call it our sort of DTA3, it's enabled us to do a lot more cross-programme training across the three disciplines.
And what's your current doctoral cohort size? How many PhD candidates do you currently
across the three programmes? We currently have about 150 active PGRs, and we have around about 80 alumni who've been and gone through it already.
Okay, so it's quite a sizable cohort. Yes. So the DTA involves a number of institutional partners across England, Wales and Northern Ireland. What are the challenges of coordinating that doctoral research across those different areas and different institutions in terms of the complexities of it and the regional differences as well?
Yeah, well, 20 universities in a consortium is quite difficult to deal with, and the challenges are there, but then sort of the challenges aren't that different to any other sort of consortium or DTPs in a sense, in that every university has its own policies, procedures, terminology, timing, so we do have to sort of work around that. But one of the core principles of the DTA when it was being set up was simplicity, and the idea was that rather than creating a whole load more bureaucracy or processes and structures, we would utilise what's already in place and provide an enhanced training programme. So students are registered at their home universities, other than through our co-fund European grant process. Universities recruit their own students and allocate them to our DTAs, and they have to follow their home universities' regulations, processes, assessments, and training requirements. So the DTA provides an added extra. To try to get that initial understanding that we are worth something to sort of provide as an enhancement was a challenge. The geographical challenge that we have hasn't really materialised in the way that I thought it would. I mean, we have 20 universities, one in Wales, one in Northern Ireland, and the rest in England, from down in Plymouth up into Portsmouth and everywhere, Teesside and everywhere in between. we still get quite good attendance at our core events, so we get around about 80% attendance, even though the students have to travel. So I think some of the challenges by developing a simple structure, I think has enabled us to sort of tackle them and build that sort of national connectivity, I suppose.
Well, that's great that a lot of the problems that you were perhaps envisaging never materialised. So that's great to hear. What do you think were the main drivers for actually facilitating those problems? I think not presenting themselves.
Communication with the partners. So every partner is equal in our consortium. We don't have a lead university, so there are no sort of struggles for power or funding. Everyone puts in the same amount of funds, and we have a shared leadership across the network. So each of our discipline programs has a director and deputy directors, all from different universities in the network, and we have a national director from a separate one as well. So I think the idea is that we have these networks, everyone can input and contribute to, has I think been one of the reasons why we haven't come up with some of the challenges. The geographical one, students are allocated bursary specifically to attend DTA events, so that there isn't the financial reason shouldn't really be an issue.
And that's very much part of the DTA's core missions, to have that national connectivity for PGR. So what have you found, and what do you think are the main benefits to doctoral candidates to have that national connectivity?
I think it's building their networks and having a broad network. So our students have access to 20 different universities, to academics there, research facilities, expertise. So rather than just their own institutions, they have that access. And with the way that our training structure is set up, and the fact that we draw on the expertise of our universities to deliver and host events, it means that our students get the opportunity to visit and spend time at, I would say probably on average, about 7 universities over the course of their studentship. Because it is about a rotational process of offering and supporting the workshops.
So some critics of doctoral training partnerships have questioned whether the doctoral candidates involved even know that they are part of a cohort. Do you think it matters that PGRs on the DTA know that they are part of a larger cohort, or do you think that they get that sense of being part of a cohort from their own institution more?
I think it definitely does matter. I think it matters for all DTPs, and I think it's a challenge for all DTPs, but I think for DTA it's really key that they know and they understand that they're part of something bigger. University Alliance PGR numbers are significantly smaller than research-intensive universities, so they quite often don't have that access to a large research community within their own institution. So being able to know that they have that, they're part of something bigger from the outset, does make a difference. And I think a couple of things that I've found with it is that if we can engage them right from the very start, whether that's that they've applied for a studentship and they know it's DTA, or whether we catch them at induction to say that this is what you're part of, has been really key, but also supervisor engagement, getting them to understand the benefits and the fact that their student is part of something outside of their own university is really key. So we try and do a lot of work with supervisors as well to encourage that.
Okay, thank you. And is that an area where you are starting to see improvement and increased engagement in terms of the supervisory involvement as well?
Yeah, over the years, I think as DTA has developed and the universities participating, understand, and it's become a bit more embedded within their cultures, we are finding that supervisors are understanding and engaging, or enabling their students to engage, because I think that's the other thing about it, encouraging them to attend events and see whether it's worthwhile, and knowing that actually taking time out is worth it, and that they are doing something to contribute to their PhD. So we do find that. I think definitely with our student engagement, it has increased over the years.
Brilliant. So do you think that developing a sense of community among PGRs helps to support their mental health and well-being?
Yes, I think it does. I think it's essential. I think that anyone has to sort of understand that if they've got a community that they can draw on, it's got to be better for your health and well-being. We're finding with our students, they've been sort of proposing workshops and events specifically around this, so we've been co-developing those with the students. And the thing I said before, there might be small numbers of them in their own institution, they might be living locally rather than sort of away, so they might just need that break and that sort of external group to draw on. And I think that I think people shouldn't be in isolation, and I think this does help combat that, and PGRs can often experience that.
And leading on from that, so we know that some researchers often don't identify themselves as a researcher and suffer imposter syndrome as part of that. How does the DTA deal with issues like that, or try as part of its programme to reduce that amongst its PGR cohort?
Well, I think we work with an amazing group of researcher developers from our partners, and we use them to sort of discuss these issues, and we get the feedback from the students, and the idea is that we develop the training together, and the support and the workshops available, and so these key things that come out, we try and embed them within, whether that's through our residential summer schools that we have on an annual basis. There's often a theme that runs through, or whether that's through specific workshops, or just being sort of open and available to students to understand what support they have. And right from the very start, it's sort of reminding them and celebrating that they're researchers, they have access to all these support mechanisms, and that it's their research, and that they need to take that ownership.
So in an era of metrics and evaluating and looking back at successes and where improvements need to be made, how do you know when you've developed a positive and successful postgraduate community?
Well, from a personal point of view, it's when the students tell you about what they've benefited from it. But obviously with metrics and evaluation, we do have to do it for funders and partners to justify why we're creating these structures. So DTA does evaluate on a continual basis. After every event we do feedback and evaluation on a quarterly basis. Students are now starting to be contacted and asked for their feedback. We do an annual report, and we're actually now in our phase of in our 5th year of DTAs, and we've been doing a look back over what's happened in the last 4 years and looking at the metrics and things like that. So part of it is that we seem to be having our first group of alumni have come through, and of those that we've heard from, 73% of them have submitted within 3.5 years of starting their PhD, and those that we know about as well have sort of, I think 80% of those have gone into employment. So those kind of metrics do support the fact that them being part of a structure has helped. And it is the feedback, and we see it. We had something recently from one of our students, current students, who's just on his first publication, based around a systematic review, and that was apparently having attended a workshop by another university as part of the DTA around systematic review, that led him to sort of develop it and enabled him to publish. So there's those kinds of stories that we are trying to capture and trying to do more about promoting as well as looking at the data and the metrics of who our students are, where they've come from and what they're going on to do.
So in terms of any institution that's perhaps thinking about what they need to do to, and you spoke a bit earlier about embedding that practice into what our graduate schools and doctoral colleges are doing. What would be your one take-home message for institutions to start thinking about what they could do differently?
If they're working within a consortium, it's talking to each other, communicating, making the most of where the expertise is, rather than trying to do everything yourself, actually collaborating with each other and delivering. If you're in a single institution, I think it is talking to the students, finding out what they need, and wherever possible, and I know this is difficult with restrictions of budgets and funds and things, is to be flexible for the types of students that you're getting. One size doesn't fit all.
No.
And we know that, and we've got our 3 different strands have very different cohort makeups. Our social policy students, the majority of them are returners from work and caring responsibilities. They can't come to events on a regular basis, so we concentrate our training in a way that we don't have to do it for maybe some of the others. So we've been enabled to be flexible in that way. So I think it's listening to the researchers and listening to your colleagues and peers across the sector.
Thank you, Jennie. It's been really interesting and rejuvenating, actually, to hear about the wonderful things that DTA are doing. I think there are some great messages that will resonate with a lot of our members in terms of how their PGRs respond, and certainly getting supervisors on board as part of that process as well. And that's very much going to be continued in the themes that the UK Council for Graduate Education will be discussing at its latest meeting for the network on the 13th of May. So we very much hope that many of you can join us then. And thank you again very much to Jennie Eldridge from the DTA University Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you.